A master RV technician in Florida recently posted a warning on a professional forum that should terrify anyone shopping for a recreational vehicle. After 22 years of repair work, he announced he would no longer accept warranty jobs from 3 specific manufacturers because the defect rates had become so extreme that his shop was losing money on every repair. The manufacturers were paying warranty rates that barely covered his cost of labor, and the volume of failures meant his bays were clogged with brand new units that should never have left the factory floor. This is not an opinion. This is not a disgruntled employee venting frustration. This is a business owner making a calculated financial decision that warranty work from certain brands costs more to fix than the manufacturers will reimburse. When a repair shop refuses money because the work is too problematic, you need to pay attention to which names are on that list. The RV industry operates under a business model that most buyers do not understand until it is too late. Approximately 80% of all RVs sold in North America come from just 2 corporate entities. Thor Industries owns Airstream, Keystone, Dutchman, Heartland, Jayco, and roughly a dozen other brands. Forest River, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, controls another massive portfolio, including Coachman, Palomino, Primetime, and Flagstaff. When you think you are choosing between competing brands, you are often just selecting different assembly lines owned by the same parent company. This consolidation has created a race to the bottom. When one corporation owns 15 brands, those brands are not competing on quality. They are competing on price point and feature lists. The corporate strategy is to segment the market into tiers. You have entry-level brands for first-time buyers, mid-tier brands for families upgrading, and premium brands for retirees with larger budgets. But the construction methods are largely identical across these tiers. The difference between a $40,000 travel trailer and an $80,000 travel trailer is often just upgraded countertops, better upholstery, and a longer list of included appliances. The walls are still wood and foam. The roof is still rubber membrane. The frame is still welded in the same facility with the same quality control problems. Let us examine specific examples of corner cutting that mechanics see every day. One of the most common defects involves the axle installation on travel trailers. Axles should be mounted to the frame with U-bolts that pass through the axle and bolt to spring hangers on both sides. This creates a solid connection that can handle the stress of highway travel and rough roads. Some manufacturers have switched to a system where the axle is welded directly to the frame. This saves approximately 15 minutes of assembly time and eliminates the cost of U-bolts and hardware. The problem is that welding the axle removes any ability to adjust alignment and creates stress points in the frame. When the weld cracks, and it will crack, the entire axle can shift position. Mechanics report seeing travel trailers with less than 5,000 miles where the axle has visibly shifted, causing tire wear patterns that indicate serious alignment problems. The repair requires cutting the old welds, repositioning the axle, and re-welding, which is expensive and never as strong as the original installation should have been. Window installation represents another area where cost-cutting creates predictable failures. RV windows are not like house windows. They are designed to be lightweight and they open in various configurations, including sliding, crank-out, and push-out styles. The proper installation method involves setting the window in a bed of butyl tape, securing it with screws into the wall frame, and then sealing the exterior edge with a high-quality lap sealant. This creates a waterproof installation that can flex with the movement of the RV without breaking the seal. Technicians are now seeing windows installed with inadequate butyl tape or with generic hardware store caulk instead of proper lap sealant. The caulk shrinks and hardens within months, creating gaps that allow water to run directly into the wall cavity. One technician described opening a wall that had water damage around a window and finding that the window had been installed with only a thin bead of silicone and no butyl tape whatsoever. The window had been leaking since the day the RV was built, and the entire sidewall required replacement at a cost exceeding $8,000. Electrical systems are being built with inadequate wire gauge for the circuits they serve. The National Electrical Code provides clear guidance on wire sizing based on amperage and circuit length. A 20-amp circuit should use 12-gauge wire as a minimum. A 30-amp circuit requires 10-gauge wire. But some manufacturers are installing 14-gauge wire on 20-amp circuits and 12-gauge wire on 30-amp circuits to save on material costs. Copper wire is expensive, and using thinner wire on hundreds of circuits across thousands of RVs adds up to significant savings. The consequence is voltage drop, which means appliances receive less power than they need to operate properly. It also means the wires heat up under load, which increases fire risk. Electricians who work on RVs report finding wire that is discolored from heat, with insulation that has become brittle and cracked. In some cases, wires have burned through the insulation and shorted against metal framing, creating a direct fire hazard. The propane systems in RVs are regulated by federal law, but enforcement is inconsistent. Propane lines should be black iron pipe or approved flexible copper tubing with proper flare fittings. Some manufacturers are cutting corners by using rubber propane hose in places where rigid pipe should be installed. Rubber hose is cheaper and faster to install because it can be routed around obstacles without cutting and threading pipe. But rubber hose degrades over time, especially when exposed to heat from appliances or road surfaces. When a propane hose fails, you have a gas leak inside an enclosed space. This is not a theoretical risk. There are documented cases of RVs exploding from propane leaks that originated from deteriorated rubber hoses that should never have been installed in the first place. Holding tank installations vary wildly in quality, and this is an area where buyers never think to look until something goes wrong. The black water tank holds sewage from the toilet, and the gray water tanks hold drainage from sinks and showers. These tanks are mounted underneath the RV, suspended from the frame by straps or brackets. The proper installation uses steel straps with protective rubber coating to prevent abrasion, bolted through the frame with large washers to distribute the load. Mechanics report finding tanks held in place with plastic straps rated for a fraction of the weight they are supporting. In some cases, tanks are secured with self-tapping screws driven into thin aluminum crossmembers. When a full black water tank weighs 300 pounds and the RV hits a bump, those screws rip out of the frame. The tank drops onto the road, rupturing on impact and spilling sewage across the highway. This is not rare. This happens often enough that RV forums have dedicated threads discussing tank mounting failures, with photos of tanks lying on the side of the road and frames with empty screw holes where the tank used to be attached. Slide-out construction has become an epidemic of poor design. The slide-out rooms on modern RVs are built as separate boxes that insert into openings in the main structure. The box has its own floor, walls, and ceiling, which must align with the corresponding surfaces of the main RV when the slide is extended. The seal between the slide-out and the main body is critical because any gap will allow water and air infiltration. Manufacturers are using increasingly flimsy construction for slide-out boxes to reduce weight. Some slide-outs have floors that are nothing more than thin plywood with vinyl flooring glued on top. There is no structural support underneath, which means the floor flexes and sags when you walk on it. The flex causes the slide-out mechanism to bind, which overloads the motor and gears. Technicians report replacing slide-out motors on RVs that are less than 2 years old because the motors burned out trying to move a slide-out that was binding due to a sagging floor. The quality of cabinetry installation tells you everything about a manufacturer's priorities. Cabinets in an RV serve the same purpose as cabinets in a house, but they must be secured well enough to survive constant vibration and movement. Properly installed cabinets are screwed through the back panel into wall studs and through the sides into adjacent cabinets or walls. The screws should be long enough to penetrate the studs by at least 1 inch. What mechanics are finding is cabinets held in place with staples, finished nails, or short screws that barely grab the thin furring strips that serve as wall studs. When the RV travels down a rough road, the cabinets work loose from their mounting points. Drawers fall out, doors swing open. Upper cabinets have been known to tear completely off the wall and crash down onto countertops or sleeping occupants. One technician described a fifth wheel where every cabinet in the kitchen had pulled loose from the wall during the delivery drive from the dealership to the buyer's home. The dealer had to send a crew to reinstall all the cabinets before the buyer could take possession, and even then, the cabinets were only secured with slightly longer screws into the same inadequate wall structure. Roof construction is where corner cutting becomes life-threatening. The roof is the most important weatherproofing component on an RV, and it is also one of the most stressed parts of the structure. The roof must support the weight of air conditioning units, vent fans, solar panels, and occasionally maintenance personnel. It must flex with temperature changes without cracking, and it must shed water without leaking for the entire life of the vehicle. The traditional RV roof consists of wooden roof trusses covered with thin plywood or luan, which is then covered with insulation and a rubber membrane. The trusses should be spaced 16 inches on center to provide adequate support. Some manufacturers have moved to 24-inch spacing to save on lumber costs. This wider spacing means the roof deck has less support and flexes more under load. When someone walks on the roof, their weight can crack the membrane or compress the insulation. When an air conditioning unit vibrates during operation, the flexing roof deck works the mounting bolts loose, which allows water to enter through the bolt holes. The rubber membrane itself is being installed incorrectly to save time. The proper method is to apply contact adhesive to both the roof deck and the membrane, allow both to become tacky, and then carefully position the membrane before pressing it down. This creates a permanent bond that prevents the membrane from lifting or shifting. Some manufacturers are applying adhesive only around the perimeter and at a few spots in the middle, leaving large areas where the membrane is not bonded to the deck. When wind gets under the loose membrane, it lifts and flaps, which causes the adhered sections to peel. The membrane then begins to roll back from the edges, exposing the roof deck to direct water penetration. By the time the owner notices, the wooden roof structure is already rotting. Furnace installations demonstrate pure negligence. RV furnaces are propane-fired forced air heaters that mount inside cabinets or enclosed spaces. They draw combustion air from outside. Burn propane to heat a combustion chamber, and then blow interior air across the hot chamber to heat the living space. The exhaust gases must be vented outside through a sealed duct. The combustion chamber gets extremely hot during operation, which means the surrounding materials must be fire-resistant and properly spaced. Technicians report finding furnaces installed with inadequate clearance to combustible materials. The manufacturer's installation instructions specify minimum distances from walls, floors, and other surfaces. But these specifications are being ignored to make the furnace fit into smaller spaces. The wooden floor underneath the furnace scorches and chars from the heat. The vinyl wall covering melts. In extreme cases, the wood actually ignites, filling the RV with smoke. One technician described finding a furnace that had been installed so close to a plastic water line that the heat had melted the pipe, causing a leak that filled the furnace enclosure with water and shorted out the circuit board. Water heaters are being installed without proper thermal expansion protection. When water is heated, it expands. In a closed system like an RV water heater, this expansion creates pressure that must be relieved to prevent the tank from rupturing. Residential water heaters use a temperature and pressure relief valve that opens automatically if pressure exceeds safe limits. RV water heaters have the same valve, but the valve must be piped to drain safely outside the RV. Some manufacturers are not installing drain tubes on these relief valves, which means when the valve opens, boiling water sprays inside the RV. Other manufacturers are using undersized relief valves that cannot handle the pressure created when the water heater is operating at maximum temperature. The result is water heaters that build excessive pressure, cause leaks at pipe fittings, or in worse cases, rupture the tank itself, flooding the RV with gallons of scalding water. The industry's response to these problems is to blame the consumer. When buyers complain about defects, manufacturers point to the owner's manual and claim that proper maintenance would have prevented the failure. The manual states that the owner should inspect the roof every 3 months, reseal all exterior penetrations every 6 months, check tire pressure before every trip, and perform dozens of other maintenance tasks. This transfers responsibility from the manufacturer to the buyer. If your window leaks, they will argue you should have inspected and resealed it. If your axle cracks, they will argue you overloaded the trailer. If your cabinet falls off the wall, they will argue you exceeded the weight rating. This strategy works because most buyers do not have the technical knowledge to challenge these claims, and the cost of hiring an expert witness for a legal dispute exceeds the cost of just paying for the repair. Dealer service departments are complicit in this system because they profit from repairs. When you buy an RV, the dealer makes money on the sale, on the financing, and on the extended warranty they sell you. But the real profit comes from the service department. Every time your RV comes back for repair, the dealer charges the manufacturer warranty rates for covered work and retail rates for non-covered work. The dealer has no incentive to demand better quality from the manufacturer because poor quality drives service revenue. This is why dealers are often reluctant to escalate complaints to the manufacturer. They would rather schedule you for a repair appointment and collect the service revenue than push for a resolution that might prevent future problems. The manufacturers that are cutting the most corners are the ones that dominate market share. They can afford to build low-quality products because their brand recognition, dealer networks, and marketing budgets ensure a steady stream of first-time buyers who do not know any better. By the time these buyers figure out they purchased a defective product, the manufacturer has already sold thousands more units to the next batch of uninformed customers. This cycle will continue until buyers start researching construction methods instead of just comparing floor plans and price tags. If you are shopping for an RV, you need to look beyond the shiny exterior and the long feature list. Ask the dealer to show you how the axles are mounted. Ask to see how the windows are sealed. Ask about the wire gauge used in the electrical system. Ask what thickness of material is used for the roof deck. Most salespeople will not be able to answer these questions because they do not know, and they do not care. Their job is to get you excited about the leather furniture in the outdoor kitchen, not to explain why the frame is welded instead of bolted. But your willingness to ask these questions will tell you everything you need to know about whether that dealer and that manufacturer are worth your money. The ones who can answer are the ones building quality products. The ones who deflect or dismiss your questions are the ones cutting corners.